Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari. Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari. Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Giridhari Radha Giridhari Radhe. Jaya Radha Giridhari Radha Giridhari Radhe. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Pariraj Gacharya Sasotasi Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Pariraj Gacharya Sasotasi Srimad His Divine Grace Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Sikaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gop Gopinath Shama Kun Radha Kun Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Prem Sikaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gop Gopinath Shamakun Radhakun Giridharan Ki Jai. Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Mayapur Dham Ki Jai. Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai. Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai. Transcendental Book Distribution Brihat Mridanga Ki Jai. Gauda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glory simply devotees. All glory simply devotees. All glory simply devotees. All glories to the lotus feet of Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naran Shaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasan Tato Jal Murirayen Naisuprayastu Badreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki Jai. I want to thank Balaram Prabhu for giving me the opportunity to speak on Bhagavatam. I was listening to a class by Madhavananda the other day, and he was talking about the 18 Puranas are actually divided into 3 different sections according to the modes of material nature that one's associated with, and that those Puranas are ultimately to elevate someone to the transcendental platform. But Srimad Bhagavatam isn't actually included in those 18 Puranas because it's considered to be transcendental, above the modes of material nature. And it's actually a literature that's meant for the Paramahamsas. So although I'm not a Paramahamsa, for my own purification, I will attempt to speak on Srimad Bhagavatam, and I pray for those who are hearing this class to give me the blessings to speak nicely. There's one end of the Bhagavatam, the reciter, and then there's also the listener. And the ability for the speaker to say something beneficial is really based on those who are hearing, because it allows there to be more reciprocation. So in that mood, I really would like to honor the relationship that we have, and thank everyone for being present, for hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. Thank you very much. So reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, 4th Canto, Canto 4, Chapter number 13. And we're going to be reading from text number 47 is the verse we have written down. 46 rather. And but we're going to start on verse 40. Should I read the Sanskrit or just the English? Up until 47. Maybe just the English? Okay. After fixing his bow and arrow, the cruel boy used to go to the forest and unnecessarily kill innocent deer. And as soon as he came, all the people would cry, "Here comes cruel Vena! Here comes cruel Vena!" Purport. Satriyas are allowed to hunt in the forest for the purpose of learning the killing art, not to kill animals for eating or for any other purpose. The Satriya kings were sometimes expected to cut off the head of a culprit in the state. For this reason, the Satriyas were allowed to hunt in the forests. Because this son of King Anga, Vena, was born of a bad mother, he was very cruel, and he used to go to the forest and unnecessarily kill animals. All the neighboring inhabitants would be frightened by his presence, and they would call, "Here comes Vena! Here comes Vena!" From the very beginning of his life, he was fearful to the citizens. Crazy. The boy was so cruel that while playing with young boys of his age, he would kill them very mercilessly, as if they were animals meant for slaughter. After seeing the cruel and merciless behavior of his son Vena, King Anga punished him in different ways to reform him, but was unable to bring him to the path of gentleness. Thus he became greatly aggrieved. The king thought to himself, "Persons who have no son are certainly fortunate. They must have worshipped the Lord in their previous lives so that they would not have to suffer the unbearable happiness caused by a bad son." A sinful son causes a person's reputation to vanish. His irreligious activities at home cause irreligion and quarrel among everyone, and this creates only endless anxiety. Purport. It is said that a married couple must have a son, otherwise their family life is void. But a son born without good qualities is as good as a blind eye. A blind eye has no use for seeing, but it is simply unbearably painful. The king therefore thought himself very unfortunate to have a bad son. Who, if he is considerate and intelligent, would desire such a worthless son? Such a son is nothing but a bond of illusion for the living entity, and he makes one's home miserable. Okay, so now we'll start chanting the verse. Kat aptayam varam manye sad apakyak chu cham pada nirvidya griyam martyo yat kalesha nirvaha griha kat apaptyam varam manye Sarapatyak churu charam pata nirvidyat griham martyo yat kalesha nirvaha griha kat apaptyam varam manye sat apakyak chucham pada nirvidyat grihan martyo yat kalesha nivaha griha. Manye Sat apachyat chachon padat nirvaveya mantyo nakalesha graha. Anyone else, or is that it? Commodore? Oh, okay. Kat apatyam, bad son. Varam, better. Manye, I think. Sat apatyat, then a good son. Socham, of grief. Padat, the source. Nirvididyat, becomes detached. Grihat, from home. Martyat, a moral man. Yat, because of whom? Kalesha nirvaha, hellish. Griha, home. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. The king thought, a bad son is better than a good son, because a good son creates an attachment for home, whereas a bad son does not. A bad son creates a hellish home from which an intelligent man naturally becomes very easily detached. Purport. The king began to think in terms of attachment and detachment from one's material home. According to Prahlad Maharaj, the material home is compared to a blind well. If a man falls down into a blind well, it is very difficult to get out of it and begin life again. Prahlad Maharaj has advised that one give up this blind wall of home life as soon as possible to go to the forest to take shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. According to Vedic civilization, this giving up of home by Vanapashtra and sannyas is compulsory. But people are so attached to their homes that even up to the point of death, they do not like to retire from home life. King Anga, therefore, thinking in terms of detachment, accepted his bad son as a good impetus for detachment from home life. He therefore considered his bad son his friend, since he was helping him become detached from his home. Ultimately, one has to learn how to detach oneself from attachment to material life. Therefore, if a bad son, by his bad behavior, helps a householder to go away from home, it is a boon. Om Agyanatiminandasya Gananjana Shalakoya Chakshurun Minitam Yenan Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobistam Sapatam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Gadantmayam Dadanti Swam Padantikam Pansha Kalpatarumbisya Kripa Sindhurevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Vishnubadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nivishesha Shunyavadi Pashtadesha Shatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So, reading this verse, I was just reflecting on the wonderful mood Anga has in regards to like a material reversal. In the material world, if someone gets a bad son, generally the rest of their life they're lamenting how he's a bad son. Like for instance, a lot of times in America, children are born into like a very wealthy family and then they develop some type of drug addiction. And that drug addiction like basically destroys the entire family. And that particular child will create so much havoc for the parents that the parents may get divorced, and then those two parents may try to get remarried. And then so not only did the child bring problems to his two parents, but he begins to bring problems to his step-parents. So I was appreciating how, this Vedic civilization, it's a completely different outlook on the way we deal with the problems of life. In the preface to Nectar of Instruction by Srila Prabhupada, he says that our advancement in Krishna consciousness is based on the attitude of the practitioner. So I wanted to know what this word attitude meant. An attitude, according to the English dictionary, is a settled way of thinking or feeling about something or someone, and it's generally reflected in someone's behavior. And it's interesting because I've been reading a book called Shuddha Bhakti Chintamani by Shivaram Swami, and he is talking about the cultivation of bhakti. And he gives he talks about Jiva Goswami's definition of what it means to cultivate bhakti, and he explains that there's two aspects to the cultivation of bhakti. He explains that in cultivating bhakti, those two aspects are chaitsa, or activity, and then secondly, the bhava, or the mood. And generally within the activity of devotion, it brings out the moods of devotion. So I was appreciating how, King Anga, he's very devotional, very devoted to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And when something comes his way, he doesn't see it as a reason to lament on a material platform. Rather, his idea of this son, he doesn't see him as an enemy because he's caused problems for his dynasty and his false ego. But rather, he sees it as an opportunity for himself to become detached from the material world. So he's actually, like Prabhupada says at the end of the purport, it's actually a boon. So I wanted to reflect on this cultivation of our attitude in Krishna consciousness and what it really means, and how our attitude is going to be expressed through our activities. So And the 6 symptoms of surrender mentioned in Saranagati by Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Saranagati is a songbook by Bhaktivinoda Thakur, and he talks about the 6 symptoms of surrender that Srila Sanatana Goswami talks about in one of his literatures. Those 6 symptoms are to reject everything unfavorable, to accept everything favorable, to consider Krishna's one to consider Krishna one's maintainer, one's protector, to be completely surrendered to the will and desire of Krishna, and to consider oneself very meek and humble. So, in reflecting on these attitudes, I figured we could enter into this discussion through understanding what attitudes are favorable to the cultivation of bhakti and which attitudes are unfavorable to the cultivation of bhakti. So, like I said, this class, it isn't just about me like speaking and giving a lecture, but it's actually meant to be like a reciprocation between the hearer and the speaker. So in that mood, I'm going to read something from the srimadbhagavatam 1.1, and we can kind of reflect on it together, on how we feel, what moods stand out to us, which were favorable, and which moods that stand out to us that are unfavorable. So if you are following along or keeping score on your phone, or you have a book, it might be helpful to get the purport out just so you're reading along, so any ideas that come to mind, you can keep track of them. Bhagavatam 1.8.26, and this is the prayers of Queen Kunti. And Queen Kunti is, Krishna is leaving the assembly of the Pandavas, and Queen Kunti is reciting these very wonderful prayers, very famous in our tradition. And so I just want to read the translation and purport by Prabhupada, so keep in mind like what we're going to discuss and what we're going to reflect on. My Lord, your lordship can easily be approached, but only by those who are materially exhausted. One who is on the path of material progress, trying to improve himself with respectable parentage, great opulence, high education, and bodily beauty, cannot approach you with sincere feeling. Purport. Being materially advanced means taking birth in an aristocratic family and possessing great wealth and education and attractive personal beauty. All materialistic men are mad after possessing all these material opulences, and this is known as the advancement of material civilization. But the result is that by possessing all these material assets, one becomes artificially puffed up, intoxicated by such temporary possessions. Consequently, such materially puffed up persons are incapable of uttering the holy name of the Lord by addressing him feelingly, O Govinda, O Krishna. It is said in the Shastras that by once uttering the holy name of the Lord, the sinner gets rid of quantities of sins that he is unable to commit. Such is the power of uttering the holy name of the Lord. There is not the least exaggeration in this statement. Actually, the Lord's holy name has such powerful potency. But there is a quality to such utterances also. It depends on the quality of feeling. A helpless man can feelingly utter the holy name of the Lord, whereas a man who utters the same holy name in great material satisfaction cannot be so sincere. A materially puffed up person may utter the holy name of the Lord occasionally, but he is incapable of uttering the name in quality. Therefore, the 4 principles of material advancement, namely high parentage, good wealth, high education, and attractive beauty, are, so to speak, disqualifications for progress on the path of spiritual advancement. The material covering of the spirit soul is an external feature as much as a fever is an external feature of the unhealthy body. The general process is to decrease the fever and not to aggravate it by maltreatment. Sometimes it is seen that spiritually advanced persons become materially impoverished. There is no discouragement. On the other hand, such impoverishment is a good sign as much as the falling of a temperature is a good sign. The principle of life should be to decrease the degree of material intoxication, which leads one to being more and more illusioned about the aim of life. Grossly illusioned persons are quite unfit for entrance into the kingdom of God. So now we'll just kind of reflect on it together. What was something that, in regards to what's unfavorable to Krishna consciousness and the cultivation of devotional service, what did you find to be that really stood out to you for unfavorable and favorable circumstances within Krishna consciousness from that purport? Yeah. Please. Yeah. Yeah, it's participation.
So I was reflecting on this idea of being puffed up, and I wasn't exactly thinking along the lines of the 4 elements which Queen Kunti just mentioned, like high parentage or beauty or anything like that, but just this general idea of pride, and how pride can keep us from kind of surrendering our mind, I guess, because when we pray, I was thinking more specifically along the lines of prayer, and asking Krishna to give us shelter and to help us through, help us overcome certain things that are inhibiting our bhakti. And so, yeah, I was just thinking, kind of reflecting on how this can be present within myself, like not wanting to surrender the mind through this prayer because of being proud or something like that.
Yeah, it's amazing how the false ego will get in the way of our ultimate purpose, because the false ego has one agenda, and then the soul has another agenda, which is the agenda of Krishna. Anyone else? Balaram? Prabhu? Oh yeah, you can say it.
There's one sentence that stood out. It was a helpless man can feelingly utter the holy name of the Lord, whereas a man who utters the same holy name in great material satisfaction cannot be so sincere. Yeah,
that's actually what stood out to me as well, was the quality of feeling. This quality of feeling, this idea that, our mood, our bhava, it greatly affects the activity that we're engaging in and the amount of heart we're putting into it. If someone has a lot of love and devotion, even if they are illiterate, like for instance in the case of the illiterate brahmana in South India that Mahaprabhu met. Mahaprabhu was traveling through South India, and he met a brahmana, an illiterate brahmana. And this brahmana was reading Bhagavad Gita every day because his spiritual master had told him, but he was illiterate. And Mahaprabhu noticed that he was crying every time he was reading this. And when he was reading this, Mahaprabhu asked him, what are you experiencing? And he said, I just think it's so beautiful that Krishna will, take the role of serving his devotee. He has so much love for his devotee that he'll take the role of being the chariot driver. And he was so touched by this little bit that he knew about Bhagavad Gita. And because he had this faith in the instruction of his spiritual master, and because he had faith in the process that the spiritual master had given him, that faith alone brought so much relish out of the activity that he was engaging in. So, even if we're not perfect in what we're doing in our Krishna consciousness, if we have the proper mood, then it's completely perfect, because that's what Krishna accepts. Krishna is Griha Bhavana Janardana, is that right? Yeah, Bhava Grahi Janardana, which means that Krishna accepts the sentiment of our heart. So we can do so many things nicely in Krishna consciousness, but if it's lacking the devotion, if it's lacking the bhava, the bhakti, then it's completely worthless. So I appreciated that point as well, actually. And we'll speak on it more as we progress. Balaram? You have anything to say? No?
Yeah, the main point Queen Kunti is mentioning there is that one has to not be bewildered or intoxicated by those different elements of, that those maybe you could say good qualities that one may have from good karma, whatever it's beauty or wealth or so many different things we could be proud about. But Kunti's saying until one's able to, rise beyond that, then they can't make much advancement.
Yeah. She makes the point that one has to be materially exhausted. So this kind of brings us to our next point that I wanted to get into, is that Benjamin Franklin, he once said that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Has anyone heard that? You've heard that? Could you explain what that means, Balram? Okay. So an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. It basically means that what we do to prevent disease is worth so much more than what it's going to take to. So a pound it weighs more than an ounce. And so generally if you have something that weighs an ounce, it's going to cost less than what's going to weigh a pound. So the amount of energy that you have to put into the prevention is actually a lot more than you have to put into the treatment in order to fix it. So I was thinking about how in this past winter I was experiencing really bad sinus issues. So I went to go see a doctor, and I saw a devotee doctor. He's actually an acupuncturist, and he did acupuncture on me, and I was just asking him, I was like, what can I do to prevent this from happening? And he said, you should stop taking dairy. I'm probably going to get slaughtered on the internet for saying this. But he told me I have a dairy allergy. So he recommended that I stop taking dairy and see what happens. And I found that when I did stop taking dairy, my sinus issues actually did start to go away. So going into acupuncture, I don't know if anyone's had acupuncture before, but it's not really like a joyful experience. You'd almost feel like you're being tortured. You're getting like needles sticked into you, and then they like crack your neck, and it's just like a really traumatic experience. But if I just simply not take dairy, what I have, the pain I'll have to experience of going to the doctor to see the acupuncturist is a lot less than that. So the idea is that Krishna is going to make arrangements for us to become materially exhausted, but we shouldn't wait for Krishna to make those arrangements. We should try to intelligently understand how the material world is exhausting to begin with through our intelligence. So in order for Krishna to purify his devotees, he'll put them in an uncomfortable position. But we ourselves, that's the treatment that Krishna will give us. But we ourselves, we can take the preventative measures by cultivating this mood, these moods of devotion. And like Prabhupada was saying, the quality of feeling. So there's many moods that one can feel in chanting, and Prabhupada highlights the most conducive of moods in the Nectar of Devotion. I was going to read the whole part, but we have to stop at what time again? 8:30, 8:40. Okay. So I'll just skip to the essential part. So this is the mood that we can reflect on, and when it comes to what we can do to advance in Krishna consciousness, and when those preventative measures when those treatments from Krishna come, we'll be well guarded because of our establishment of our preventative measures in Krishna consciousness. So Prabhupada says that he's speaking about different moods of feeling in prayer, and there's 3 different moods. There's very feelingly offering prayers, humbly submitting oneself, and desiring some perfectional stage. These moods are particularly highlighted in our Vaishnavacharya songs, but I'm just going to skip to the very end because of time restrictions. In other words, one should learn how to cry for the Lord. One should learn this small technique, and he should be very eager and actually cry to become engaged in some particular type of service. This is called lalyum, and such tears are the price for the highest perfection. If one develops this lalyum or excessive eagerness for meeting and serving the Lord in a particular way, that is the price to enter into the kingdom of God. Otherwise, there is no material calculation for the value of the ticket by which one can enter the kingdom of God. The only price for such entrance is this lalyum lahasila mai, or desire and great eagerness. So this cultivation of lalyum, greed for the perfectional stage of Krishna consciousness, is what we can do, is our preventative measures against the material energy. Because this greed, it actually can't be acquired, because it's actually It can't be acquired, it has to become manifest in our heart. Because it's actually the benediction of Bhakti Devi giving us that desire, that deep desire. So this desire for perfection and service, it actually comes to the association of devotees that have this desire. And that's explained in Madhurya Kandamani by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. He explains that Bhakti is completely independent like Krishna, and he quotes Havai Pumsam Paro Dharmo Bhavator Bhakti Rahoksaje Ahoitakiya Pratiyata Yayatman Supersediti, which means that the perfectional stage of human life is to engage in the transcendental loving service of the Lord, and this love should be unmotivated and uninterrupted to completely satisfy the self. But he makes the point that Bhakti is the energy of Krishna, so it's non-different from Krishna, so it's independent like Krishna, so it can't be acquired through any material piety. It's not dependent on any material calculation. It's completely independent, and it will only manifest itself through the desire of a devotee, because Krishna is bound by the love of his devotees. That's one of the characteristics that Krishna has in the nectar of devotion. So someone who has bhakti, who has this volume, they're able to give us this volume. So we have to pray for that association. It's just like if you have a garden and you're trying to plant a seed. If you want a seed in your garden, you should go to a farmer who has good seeds. So a devotee who's on this level of volume, who's on this high level of Krishna consciousness, prema bhakti, they can give us that thing. And it's just like, if you go to a funeral, this is an example that Madhavananda gives in his class. He says if you go to a funeral, he says he's done a lot of funerals because he's kind of like a priest. And so he's done a lot of arrangements like that. And he says, when you go to a funeral, you may not know any of the people, the person that's died. But when you get there, the mood of the people, because of their pain that they're feeling, the crying that they're feeling from not having this person anymore, you develop some of that emotion simply by being in their presence, even though you didn't even know the person. So similarly, the perfection of a devotee is that they're always seeing Krishna. And always seeing Krishna doesn't mean like seeing Krishna's form everywhere. It means whatever they see, they're thinking of Krishna, and they're deeply desiring to want to be with Krishna and see Krishna. This is the mood of our lineage. It's love and separation. So if we can get into the association, get our foot in the door with these devotees, then we can actually begin to develop this mood. And the example that's given of this that makes me the example that I thought of in relation to this and in relation to Krishna's pastimes is the pastime of the Yajnik Brahmanas. So the Yajnik Brahmanas, they were like very ritualistic and perfect in performing fruitive activities of the Vedas. But when Krishna and Balaram's cowherd boyfriends came up to see them and beg charity from them, they wouldn't give it to them because their heart was covered over by these materialistic activities. But then when Krishna sent his cowherd boys to go speak with the Yajnik Brahmana's wives, they actually immediately gave charity to them. So they had this spontaneous devotion to want to go see Krishna immediately. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains that they got this spontaneous devotion to want to go see Krishna because since they were young girls, they had been hearing from the village girls of Vrindavan who would come and sell them betel nuts and flowers and these different arrangements for their yajnik's performances. So by the association with these devotees, through these gopis who were constantly describing the beauty, quality, and sweetness of Krishna, they developed a desire to want to go see Krishna. So eager that when their husbands and family members tried to hold them back from going to see them, they actually said, forget it. They rejected all religious formalities. Sarva dharmam parikyaja mamikam samaramvaja. They gave up all religious duties and formalities in order to engage in the topmost thing, which is having darshan of Krishna, serving Krishna. And then when the Yajnik Brahmanas, when they repented for what they did, realizing it was Krishna and Balaram, they had a desire to go see Krishna as well. But because they were still a little bit contaminated by materialistic activities and their faith wasn't completely developed, because of their fear of King Kamsa, they wouldn't go and actually see Krishna immediately. So if we can get the association of devotees who have this eagerness will be the fuel that will inspire our Krishna consciousness to move forward. And so we'll know that we've gotten the mercy of these devotees when we have a desire to want to share Krishna with others. It's just like the gopis in the pastime of the yogic brahmanas that were sharing with the yogic brahmanas' wives the beauty, quality, and sweetness of Krishna. It wasn't that their temple president had to tell them to go out on book distribution, for them to go tell people about Krishna. They spontaneously were just doing that. It was their natural propensity. So actually, it's our natural propensity as well to be part and parcels of Krishna, to hear and speak about Krishna. But in order for that to become thickened, just like through the process of thickening sugar cane, there's a process that goes through it. The process that thickens that faith and thickens that eagerness and uncovers our natural position is hearing from those devotees that have that eagerness. So I think I'm going to stop there. Does anyone have any comments or questions? Yes. Yeah.
You were speaking about love and separation. I was just thinking of how we're so materially covered that one can't feel the bhakti or the bhava until you associate with other devotees, and it's sort of like awakening that burning desire to call out his name. And when one realization that I had was that the names are no different from Krishna himself, and so by calling out and yearning, you kind of realize how much you're materially exhausted and how there's no other way to free from this cycle, I guess.
Yeah, that's a good point. My Guru Maharaj talks about how there's a class that he gives on Bhaktivinoda Thakur, and it's probably one of my favorite classes. I must have listened to it like a dozen times. But he goes through the different songs of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, and one of the songs that he talks about is Amara Jivana, which is it's in the mood of, please forgive me if I say this wrong, Danya, is that right? Danya, yeah, Danya. So this is deep humility, and if you read this song, Bhaktivinoda Thakur is saying that he's the most sinful person, that he's the most fallen person. And my Guru Maharaj makes the point that, when we really are chanting and the phrase that he used is mining our heart for just a drop of sincerity in chanting, it's such a beautiful thing, especially when you can get into that mood and that meditation, that I'm just going as deep as I possibly can into myself and in my chanting to just try to find a drop of sincerity in my chanting. And you have that sincerity when you begin to feel the mood that Bhaktivinoda Thakur is feeling in this song. It's a very exalted mood, and we may not necessarily feel it immediately, but we can meditate on its purport, we can meditate on its meaning, and understand that that's actually what we're aspiring for. We're aspiring for this feeling of such deep humility that even though we're advancing in Krishna consciousness, and even though we may have qualifications, we still feel ourselves to be the lowest person on the totem pole. And actually, in order for this greediness to be cultivated, this is a point that I wrote down, but I didn't make it, but I can bring it out now. In order for this greediness to be cultivated in the garden of our heart, the soil of that greediness, of that seed, is actually our humility. Because if we're not willing to be humble, to take advantage of the association of the Vaishnavas that have those feelings, then we can actually never receive it. So we have to cultivate our heart in such a way that we become open to what these advanced devotees are willing to give us. And thank you for your point. I really appreciate it. Jai. Anyone else? Damodar Kumar? No?
just to expand on your point of approaching with the right feeling. At the end of His Holiness Ranath Maharaj's autobiography, he explains how this is after he's just completed his very long quest for truth, and he arrives to India and meets so many yogis, and then somehow or other he's in Amsterdam, and the most very unusual place, but there happened to be a temple, Radha Krishna temple there, and it was just appreciating Srila Prabhupada how he through his endeavor he expanded it throughout the world. And what he found in this most precious sacred place of India, Vrindavan, is now he made accessible everywhere. But he was explaining how, he's like concluding his story, and then he mentions how he hears a cry of a child, and at that moment he was thinking how he could, when will the day come when he can cry so genuinely as the child was for his mother. And it seems like, as you're explaining, Vaisheshika Maharaj explaining the mood of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, that really, when we really feel deeply connected to the holy names we're relishing, it's because we actually feel this deep humility, the mood of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, and that's really the essence.
Yeah.
Like anytime when we're really becoming immersed, absorbed, and we're really experiencing anything, it's because we actually feel like the soul, is genuinely making a heartfelt cry for God.
Mm-hmm.
So anytime we have some deep realizations, we're just coming back to that essence, whether it's through japa, through kirtan, through satsang, relishing prasad. It's that feeling is when we truly feel like you're saying, like worthless, really humble, and feeling that dependency on God.
Yeah. I have one story I'd like to tell. Do I have enough time, Balaram? Okay. My Guru Maharaj tells a story about when you brought up the point about when you heard the baby crying. This story popped into my mind. My Guru Maharaj tells a story about when they were distributing books in North Carolina, and they came to the door of someone, and when they opened the door, it was a man who was physically handicapped to a very large degree. And they presented the books to him, and his caretaker was not interested, but he was very interested. And he said, "No, no." And I think he actually had a speech impediment because how physically handicapped he was. And they showed him the books, and he was very interested. And he was fighting off his caretaker so he could hear what the devotees had to say. And then when they asked for a donation, the caretaker was like, "That's it, no way." And he was like, "No, no, no." And he forced her to go get some money. And so he gave a donation for the book. And then at the end of it, my Guru Maharaj says, "Do you believe in the power of prayer?" Then he taught him the Maha Mantra. He said, "Okay, repeat after me. Hare Krishna." And my Guru Maharaj says that this man used all the strength that he possibly could conjure up to go, "Hare Krishna." And he went through the whole mantra, chanting like that. And when they closed the door and the interaction was over, my Guru Maharaj turned around and he said, nearly all the devotees had tears in their eyes. Because this person, one of the devotees said that, "I wish I could chant with such enthusiasm, with such eagerness." So it's amazing, how in the process of Sankirtan and the Krishna consciousness movement, that we're engaging in a preaching movement. And through engaging in this preaching movement, I have found in book distribution that some of the greatest lessons I've learned have come from people that I'm meeting on the street. And it's amazing that when we give ourselves to this movement, how it really pulls that humility out of us. We have no other choice. It's going to be pulled out of us one way or another, whether it's through the preventative methods of our own or the treatment of Krishna. As much as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wants this movement to expand all over the world, even more so than that, he wants to see the devotees within this movement become pure themselves. And becoming pure means developing this quality of deep humility and surrender to Krishna. Thank you, Damodar Kumar. Jai. Yeah.
So, the other day, I forget who gave class, but you had given a comment. One thing that you had said was that, the pure path is already laid out for us, and there may be difficulties, but we just have to grit our teeth and just take to the pure path, to the pure process. So bringing that into today's discussion, and kind of my comment earlier in the middle of class, this idea of submitting ourselves, like through prayer, and feelingly calling out. So if we are not yet at that stage where we can truly feelingly call out, is it that we just grit our teeth and try and do it anyway? Like, is that acceptable? Is it still potent? Is it, like, how is that?
It's kind of like I was saying. We should understand the goal, but in order for us to genuinely develop this feeling, we have to associate with those who have it. And associating means kirtan, reading, hearing, and chanting. It's not just taking prasadam together and talking about the weather. It's really developing, deep Vaishnav association, and really yearning for that association. And if we can't cry out for Krishna, but we understand that that's what we're supposed to do, we can cry out for Krishna. And just like we can cry out for Krishna, we can also cry out to Krishna's devotees, to want that association, because the idea is that, like in Guru Tattva, if your mood towards your spiritual master is actually the mood you'll develop for Krishna as well. And there's Diksha Guru and there's Shiksha Guru. So those Vaishnavas who are particularly inspiring us, we can cry out for that association. We can meditate on how we're longing for that association and how we're missing them. That we want to be with them because, they have what we want, and we want to have that too. We want to have this feeling that they have, this mood that they have. And so meditating on those people that we feel that have particularly inspired us in our Krishna consciousness and yearning to have their association is a great way to cultivate that mood. Just thinking about the things that you appreciate in Krishna consciousness and how those things are really coming from the association of devotees. I mean, nothing in Krishna consciousness is impersonal. Everything is so personal. So anything that we appreciate in Krishna consciousness has its root, has its connection to some person. So trying to trace out who those people are and just desiring their association, developing a greediness for their association, is a great step in the right direction. And Krishna, seeing that desire in our heart to want to have that mood, will make arrangements for us to understand it more deeply and go deeply into it ourselves. Is that okay? Anyone else? Okay. Grantaraj srimadbhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. ISKCON SanDiego Sadhu Sangha ki jai. Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki jai.